Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It's Thursday, just a few minutes before 6 o'clock Eastern Time on this July 19th of 2018. And it's going to be pretty interesting next 48 to 72 hours or so with some of the stuff that's happening and that we're going to get into. I just want to say right off the bat, for those of you who are new to my YouTube channel, welcome aboard. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel by just hitting the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you a thing. And we do live streams at least once a day. And when weather conditions warrant, sometimes we'll do multiple live streams. So happy to have you. You certainly can participate on the chat. What I usually do is run through the weather and then come back to the board and get involved in the conversation. So if you have any questions or comments, please, by all means, feel free. And if you have any ideas or suggestions or something you might want to see, by all means, put it up there and we'll see what we can do about it. Just a couple of notes. I'll just kind of do this off the top. We're trying to get Bill Goodman, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, in Upton, New York. Upton is in central Long Island, and their responsibility is northeastern New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, much of southern Connecticut, and the southern areas of the lower Hudson Valley, mainly from Putnam County, Putnam and Orange counties southward. So we're going to try and get him on for the Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight on Facebook, which we're going to probably put on at about 9:15. Really? Seriously? No audio? Well, the audio's on. Is anybody else having a no audio issue? Please let me know. Is the audio okay? Robert Russo says he's got no audio. Can somebody let me know on the chat board if there is audio? Audio is working. Thank you, Dio. So, you know what, Robert? It's your audio. Your audio. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Got it. Awesome. Great. All right, so trying to get Bill Goodman, a meteorologist, for the Joe and Joe Weather Show. That'll be at roughly at 9 o'clock on Facebook. Sometimes our schedule makes us come on a little bit earlier than that and sometimes a little bit later, but figure around 9 o'clock. If you aren't on Facebook, I will, as always, put this up on the YouTube channel once we're done over there. So figure about an hour later, it should show up in the video library. He's got some interesting thoughts about what's going on. And in fact, let's get right to what is going on. Because we have a rather unusual scenario that is developing in the eastern part of the United States. We've been touching upon it over the last few days with this idea of this deep trough that's coming into the east and a coastal low that is going to form. In fact, it's already starting to develop, and we're going to take a look at that on the radar in a second. But I want to start with the upper air. These maps, by the way, as always, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. Levi Cowan is Levi Cowan's wonderful site. And if he's hearing the sound of my voice, Levi, we're trying to get you on here too. So we'd love to Skype you one night, especially when we have a tropical system going on. So get back to me, okay? Anyway, here we have the upper air. And here's the trough that drops in, and we're moving through Friday, and we're using the NAM model. Now, I want you to notice something here. Notice the tilt is northwest, southeast. This is what we call a negatively tilted trough. This lifts up these systems northward. The flow along the east coast becomes increasingly southerly as we move into Saturday, and that trough actually almost goes east-west. So any surface low that develops is just going to shoot right up, and it's in these negatively tilted trough situations that you can oftentimes, if you have a strong enough shortwave coming up and around, you can get some pretty interesting weather that happens with this. You know, very heavy rainfalls, strong winds, and all the rest that go with it. Now, I'm going to bring up right away, I think, the big question that a few people have put out already several times, and that is whether this thing becomes tropical or not. I believe, based on what I'm seeing, that we are not going to see this system become tropical, and the reason why is, well, two things. I think that the surface low is going to be tracking a little bit too close to the coast. If we wind up with a surface low that tracks far enough offshore where it can graze the Gulf Stream, or at least move over the Gulf Stream, then I think we have a chance that you could see this thing become tropical. But I got to tell you, even if it does, I don't think it really matters too much in terms of the practical weather outcome. It'll be about the same in terms of what we will see with rain and what we will see with wind. So here's your trough, and here's the when I refer to that tilt. So here's the axis of the trough. I'm going to draw it in for you right there. So there it is. And by the way, this little bump, I'm going to draw it right through this area here. I'll highlight it. Whoops, wrong color. Hold on, wrong shape actually. But right in here, where there's like a little kink there in the height line. That's where the surface low is probably going to be, somewhere in this area, based on the 18Z NAM run. And this is actually over Chesapeake Bay or just over the Delmarva Peninsula. This is for tomorrow evening, and it's going to be lifting up straight to the north. Some models are a little bit further to the east. I'll just be, just to allow for error, I'll put it right near the coastline. And basically the track of this is going to be from just off the Florida coast right to about Jacksonville, kind of straddling the coastline, pretty much straight up over Hatteras or just west of Hatteras, so that it winds up in this position. It's too close to land, I think, to make this fully transition over to a warm core. And as I said, I don't think it's going to make a difference from the practical weather with regards to this. It's also going to be moving rather quickly. So once that trough bodily comes in and starts to lift it up, it is going to start moving. So it only would have a limited amount of time to be over warmer water. The waters, once you get north of 35 degrees north, they are relatively warm, but they aren't exactly warm enough. They can juice up something maybe technically to tropical storm strength. So really, it becomes about a technical designation rather than anything that is more meaningful. We're going to get the same stuff out of this no matter what. So at this point, I want to come back to the NAM on the surface, and we'll look at what it does. This is for, just want to make sure the picture is centered nicely for you. And if you look at the top of the map, you can see the time and the date. The 0Z, this is in Greenwich Mean Time, so you want to subtract 4 hours. So this is at 8 o'clock Saturday evening. So let's show you how we get there. And we start to see, we're already actually beginning to see evidence on the radar. And here's a radar from Jacksonville. There's a little bit of counterclockwise turning here. So some sort of cyclogenesis is beginning. If you look at the echoes in coastal northern Georgia up into near South Carolina, most of those echoes there on the northern side of that are kind of moving slowly from east to west, whereas the echoes that are down in northern Florida are moving more west to east. So there's some kind of broad low that is beginning to develop here, maybe somewhere north of Jacksonville, south of Savannah, somewhere in there. We're seeing a bit of a surface low. And here it is on the satellite loop, and a lot of convection, very disorganized though, but certainly a lot of convection. That's one, there's a missing frame there. The GOES people are having some problems today with some of their loops, so I was able to find this one of the southeast. And certainly we're seeing ample thunderstorm activity. We don't really see too much in terms of a sign of any kind of low-level circulation yet. We'll see if that changes over time. But this is all part of the mess that is headed our way. So back to the NAM, and we'll move the map along. And here comes your surface low. Now, in the meantime, by the way, here in the Northeast, the weather is dry. Also, representing the upper low is this low in Wisconsin that is producing some showers and thunderstorms with that as it moves southeastward. And actually, when you look at the upper air, this is really something that you don't really see very often this time of year. You see it in the fall. The look of the upper air is something that you would see in the wintertime and in the spring, but you don't really see these upper lows diving southward like this too often during the summertime. There's your surface low by 11 a.m. Saturday, and then as we move, this is at 8 p.m. Saturday, a low just east of the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula, a 998 pressure. The NAM is, of all the models, has been the most aggressive with the pressure, which I think is kind of interesting. It's certainly, you know, an extra 6 or 7 millibars can make a big difference in terms of the pressure gradient as far as a wind, you know, a 20 to 30 mile an hour wind, or a 30 to 40 mile an hour wind, or 40 to 50 miles an hour in terms of gusts. This round of the NAM tracked the low a bit further to the west, actually moves it into Delaware Bay and sweeps a lot of the rain north and west of the center. It is behaving, and its character looks more non-tropical than tropical. But again, I try not to get too hung up on that with this situation, because either way, if this got a name, it would your outcome, I think, would still be the same in terms of what you would see from practical weather. And by 7 a.m., the low on this run actually is in northeastern Pennsylvania and moving northwestward because it's rotating around the upper low. If you look at the other surface low, if you watch the other surface low at the same time, that is actually dropping southeastward. That is reflecting the upper low. So as that the one surface low pivots around as the trough lifts up, and the other one is dropping southeastward. So, you know, very interesting watching it this time of year to see how these systems react to all the dynamics that we see aloft. And here it is as we look at the situation aloft. You've got the upper trough. By the time we get, and I'll back it up so you can take a look, the extension there, that little blue spot that's in Georgia there, right along the Georgia coast, that's where your coastal low is. And then you've got the low that's underneath the upper low that's coming down from Wisconsin, and you'll notice that upper low drops southward as the trough lifts up. And then the upper low is going to continue to drop southward. I'm going to switch to the GFS so we can go out a little bit further with regards to the pattern beyond 84 hours. You can see that upper low weakens and drops straight south. You still have, by the way, a southerly flow up the eastern seaboard into the first part of next week and probably through most of next week. The jet in Canada comes down into Minnesota and into the northern lakes, but it doesn't push all the way down. That's where your drier air is. And if we have this stubborn southerly flow like this for next week, you're going to see opportunities for downpours and thunderstorms pretty much all week long. Late next week, a trough tries to drop in, but notice it drops more to the west than to the east. The ridge in the Atlantic is actually trying to build at the same time. And eventually you do have another trough replacing this one to our west, continuing that southerly or southwesterly flow. This really will keep things warm and humid. Some days will be a little warmer than others, and you will see opportunities for downpours and thunderstorms, again, pretty much every day. Here's the GFS late this afternoon, and we can see what it does. And actually the GFS, which has been showing this left motion, actually went a little bit further to the right. We're going to have to really watch closely where the surface low winds up, because if it does like the NAM, you're going to shift that heavy rain area further to the west. If the new GFS is correct and you've got this thing a little further to the east, then you're talking about heavier rains for not so much in Pennsylvania, but in New Jersey and over Long Island, and it really goes hog wild with this patch of rain coming into southern New England. So track is going to be very important. This is going to be a very tight low that we're dealing with. Once the low goes by, I think weather conditions could improve on Sunday afternoon behind it before we start to see the waves of moisture coming up around the trough to the west as we move into early and the middle part of next week. And now we're into Wednesday, and you can see how every day there's some shower and thunderstorm activity to contend with. I want to put up the upper air across the whole scheme of things in the Atlantic. I'll go back one run. We don't have enough of the new GFS yet to go all the way out, but we certainly have the last run from midday. And here it is in terms of looking at it from North America. The trough drops in the east. You still got some pretty busy action in Canada. That trough eventually weakens and tries to drop into the Gulf of Mexico. Another broader trough sets up across the Great Lakes and middle Mississippi Valley. You still have this southerly flow, and we're going into now day 10 and 11, so we're at the end of July. Ridge in the west trying to pop up. Ridge off the east coast, weak trough in the middle, and it kind of goes on and on from there. The tendency for troughing in the east is going to become more and more important as we move through the month of August. It's going to mean a number of things, including frequent, perhaps, we've been getting these shots of dry air coming into the eastern part of the United States. We may see them more frequently if the trough in the east decides to settle in and become active, where you've got systems coming down from Canada. You might start to see them coming through every 3 days or so. That's just speculation on my part. And also the fact that the trough in the east persisting is something that we're going to have to think about as the hurricane season begins to go in its peak period, August into the first part of October, and particularly the last half of August into the first week of October. So we're going to want to be careful going forward. If the trough wants to be in the east, it may signal that as these systems develop, they are going to have a bit of more of a northward component of motion, as opposed to the ones we saw last hurricane season, which wanted to go more west than north. And that will have potential ramifications for the East Coast as far as hurricane threats are concerned. And by the way, even though this system is not becoming, I don't think is going to become a tropical system or get a name, but it's another instance, I think, of a homegrown weather system along the East Coast, even though it's being basically inspired by that deep trough that's coming down to the west. I think it goes to the argument that you could wind up seeing these sort of what we would call homegrown tropical systems, where instead of them coming out already as hurricanes out of the tropical Atlantic, not to say it can't do that, but rather than do that like we saw last year, one after another, that perhaps this year we're going to see the formations occur closer to the mainland. And if especially as far as the East Coast is concerned, that is something that could wind up being important. Reaver 501 pointing to 1985 as an analog year. 85, I think the reason why 85 is being pointed to as an analog year by some is because that the ocean water temperature profile is very similar. That is, that the ocean water temperatures in the tropical Atlantic are kind of, they're still a little bit below average. They have been warming up, but we had a similar situation back in 1985. We still wound up with a couple of systems that came out from the Cape Verdes, or the Cabo Verdes, as we call them, and Gloria being one of them. We also had 3 majors that year, so the colder than average ocean, at least at the start of the season, didn't stop 3 major hurricanes from occurring. And remember also that here we are at July 19th, and we are in the Atlantic through the sea storm, and that's actually active for the first part of hurricane season. Can we describe the low Anthony Orr as a hybrid low? I want to see what it looks like on the satellite and radar going into tomorrow night, and especially on Saturday. Let's see if it does. Given its origin, it wouldn't be a total shock if it winds up with some warm core characteristics. But that presence of that deep upper low to the west will probably limit that. And as I said, Anthony, I don't think it makes a difference in that if warm core or cold core, if you're going to get 30 to 40 mile an hour winds along the immediate coast. And by the way, I would just want to emphasize too with my forecast with respect to winds out of this, I think we're talking coast, immediate coast, basically right on the beaches of New Jersey and Long Island, southernmost Connecticut and southeastern New England. From there southward, we could see some gales or certainly some gusts of gale force. Winds will be lower, although I still think it will be a bit on the breezy side inland. But I think you would get the same thing either way. In terms of rainfall, maybe if it winds up being more warm core than anything else, maybe you'll wind up juicing the rainfall amounts in some places. It is going to be moving rather quickly, and we're talking about precipitation basically in about an 8-hour time frame, 8 to 10 hour time frames. And for areas from that I cover, coastal New Jersey to southern New England and everybody in between, including Long Island, New York City, Hudson Valley. I mean, we're really kind of talking about, mid to late afternoon Saturday till maybe right around or just before daybreak on Sunday. Areas to the south will obviously get the rain coming in faster. Areas to the north we'll see it move out faster. But we're talking about a relatively short time frame. So unless you get some really, really juicy moisture and some really good inflow with that southeast flow coming in off the ocean, I still think we could somebody's going to wind up with several inches of rain out of this and the potential for some flash flooding. But anything more extreme, I don't know that you would wind up. I just don't know if you wouldn't wind up with the same thing either way. But as far as the warm core characteristic stuff, I want to wait till Saturday. Later Friday night and on Saturday, and see, what are we looking at the radar? What are we looking at on the satellite? Is there evidence of thunderstorms developing in and around a circulation center? That's what I would be waiting for. And Jason Cioffi, in terms of the broad perspective, yes, for the Atlantic, as far as hurricane season is concerned, you got all that African dust from the Sahara out there still evident on the satellite. As long as that's there, it's really going to keep these tropical waves from doing anything. Now, there is some suggestion that the Saharan dust should start to cut down in the next 2 weeks, so that by the time we get to the end of the month, we will see much less of that, and that these waves may wind up they may wind up developing as they move across the Atlantic. We'll see. It would kind of make sense that would happen, but a lot of times in years you get this Saharan dust. It never seems to want to go away. Priscilla Mayu, the weekend will be an inside kind of weekend for you. Hot heat indices will be too high for outside activities. You know what? You just reminded me. I happened to look at Phoenix again today because they have excessive heat warnings up for much of Southern California and the Southwest. And the thing is that also in parts of the Southwest, still having issues in some areas with flash flooding because of the monsoons and the monsoon and the tropical moisture. Right now at Glendale Municipal Airport, it's 106. The dew point is 66. Okay, that's humid for them, and it gives you a heat index of 112. One of the things when it's bone dry in the Southwest, when the air is really bone dry and you look at a temperature of 106, you'll find that the heat index is lower by sometimes by as much as 7 or 8 degrees. That is not the case here. You got all this tropical air that is sitting in the Southwest, just making things horribly, horribly humid and unbearable. So I don't blame you for wanting to be indoors. And by the way, another takeaway for the weather that we've had in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states with these shots of dry air coming down, with this pattern that is setting up, we are going to get into the humid conditions starting on Saturday, and it's just going to stay humid right through the end of the month. Unless something comes down from the north, unless the Canadian jet somehow were to come down and get this out of the way, and we get into some kind of a northwest flow aloft, it's going to be very hard to bring those dew points down. So it was nice to have those air masses through July so far, but it looks like we're done with that, at least through the end of the month, and we may have to wait until the pattern shifts a little bit, and that may not happen until we get into the early part of August. And some of the climo models that I looked at, took a brief look at this afternoon, suggest that much of the East will be experiencing overall near average temperatures, which would be nice, because if we have near average temperatures with a near average pattern, that would certainly allow for dry air masses and cooler air masses to eventually start penetrating the Northeast and into the Mid-Atlantic states, much like we've seen in the month of July and much like we've seen back in the month of June. All right, so we'll wrap it up at this point. Let me just say again, if you joined us late, welcome to my YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to by hitting the subscribe button. Thank you very much for those of you who have. And at roughly 9 o'clock tonight, depending on how our schedules work out, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook. And hopefully we will have meteorologist Bill Goodman on with us to talk about this weather situation that we are looking ahead to for the northern Mid-Atlantic and southern areas of the Northeast for Saturday and Saturday night. Bill is from the National Weather Service in Upton, New York, which has New York City and the nearby areas as its responsibility. We want to mention, as always, that you can, if you shop on Amazon, you can do it on the Amazon link that's on the descriptor of this live stream, or if you're watching this later on, recorded, it'll be on the descriptor to the video. We are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees from Amazon by linking to them. And also we have a link to Ebates to give you extra cash back. And we are participating in the Ebates affiliate program, which is designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees from Ebates by linking to their website. So I just wanted to put that disclosure out there. Will it be raining on Saturday by 7? Kelvin Carranza, where are you, Kelvin? Are you, I'm assuming if you're in the New York, city and nearby areas, yes, probably will be. If you're in southern New Jersey, I think the rain probably gets there, earlier Saturday afternoon. Okay, you're on Long Island. I'm thinking the timing on this is some models are, slower, a little faster. I'm kind of leaning to the idea that it gets in Long Island mid to late afternoon on Saturday, and that it's done by daybreak Sunday, and that the heaviest rain and the gustiest winds will be during Saturday night. But I think Saturday morning looks fine, and maybe even the first part of Saturday afternoon. If I'm too fast, then you could wind up having the whole day dry, and that the rain holds off until Saturday night. So one last question. You got it in there just in time. Thank you very much for all of you being here. If you're not on Facebook, I'll put the Joe and Joe show on the video library, and you can watch it there later on this evening. I usually get it uploaded by about 10 o'clock tonight. Thanks, everybody, for joining in. We will see you later. And by the way, if things start to look a little dicey with this low, if it winds up being a little further east, if it winds up that maybe it does decide it wants to become tropical and it's an issue, we may live stream more than once on tomorrow and again over the weekend. And by the way, I also should mention two other things. The Hurricane Center is not talking about this at all at the moment. I actually was a little bit surprised. I kind of thought that maybe they would put out some kind of a statement saying that, a non-tropical low will be developing along the southeast United States and moving up the eastern seaboard this weekend, producing some heavy rains and gusty winds. And we don't expect the system to become tropical. We do expect the system perhaps could become subtropical. I don't know what they would say, but I thought they might have already started to say something. Maybe they'll say something tonight in their 8 o'clock update, or perhaps they'll wait till tomorrow morning, or perhaps in their view they don't think that this is going to be anything other than a cold core cyclone. So we'll see what they decide. Right now they aren't saying anything. And of course, as always, when it comes to making any kind of decisions that are relevant to you, when we have these sort of storm situations, please consult your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov or your local government officials, and you can talk to them because they know your area far better than I do. So I can't really answer those kind of questions, but those folks can, and you could start by going to weather.gov. All right, folks, have a great evening. We'll see you later on Facebook or tomorrow right here on YouTube.